All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're skipping all the high-level theory and getting our hands dirty with a real-world case study. This is the story of how we took a critical application on Google Cloud and rebuilt it to survive a complete and total disaster, from the initial design all the way to a live fire test. So let's get into it. I want you to just picture this for a second. It's a normal work day and bam, your most important app, the one that basically pays the bills, just goes dark. The clock starts ticking. Loud. Every single second that passes, the pressure mounts. So the real question is, are you actually ready for that moment? Because that's the exact question we had to answer for ourselves. You know, every good story has a hero, right? Well, in our story, the hero is this core business application, and its challenge, its quest, was to figure out how to survive what we'd consider a worst-case scenario, a complete regional outage, and come out the other side with as little disruption as possible. Now, to really get why this was so important, you just need to look at this one number, $100,000. That was the estimated cost to the business for every single hour this application was offline. Suddenly, this isn't just some tech problem for the engineers to solve. No, this is a massive, board-level financial risk. The stakes couldn't be higher. Okay, so with that kind of money on the line, you can't just cross your fingers and hope for the best. The very first thing we had to do on this journey was to stop worrying in vague terms and start defining exactly what good looked like. We had to set clear, measurable rules for the game. And that brings us to the two absolute pillars of any disaster recovery plan, RTO and RPO. Think of RTO, Recovery Time Objective, as your stopwatch. It answers the question, how fast we have to be back online. Then you've got RPO, Recovery Point Objective. That's all about your data. It answers how much data in minutes or hours can we afford to lose forever? And here is where the rubber meets the road. We turn those technical acronyms into real business goals. Our RTO was less than 1 hour. The goal? Be back up and running before our customers really started to feel the pain. And our RPO was less than 5 minutes. That meant we could lose, at most, a few minutes of transaction data. Super ambitious targets, for sure, but absolutely what the business needed. So how were we going to hit those targets? Well, we had to move away from what we called the house of cards, this single region setup that was just one big single point of failure. And we moved to the fortress. Our new design was an active/passive multi-region architecture. You can just think of it as having a perfect ready-to-go clone of our entire application in a totally separate GCP region, just sitting there waiting in the wings. So, with the blueprint locked in, it was time to actually start building. This next part of the story was all about the implementation, about forging the actual tools, scripts, and processes that would make a seamless failover even possible. We broke down all the work into 3 really critical streams. First, we automated backups for absolutely everything, non-negotiable. Second, we configured cross-region replication. This was huge. It meant our data was constantly, and I mean continuously, syncing to that standby region. That was our secret weapon for hitting that tiny 5-minute RPO. And third, and you could argue this was the most important step, we wrote the runbook. I absolutely love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head. Our runbook wasn't just some boring document filed away somewhere. It was our pilot's emergency checklist. The idea is, in a real crisis, when the alarms are blaring and your heart is pounding, you don't have time to think or problem solve. You just need to execute the plan step by step, flawlessly. You know, a plan, no matter how brilliant it seems on paper, is really just a theory until you test it. So that brings us to the most nerve-wracking, but also the most exciting part of this whole story, the moment of truth. It was time to simulate a full-blown disaster and see if our fortress could actually take the punch. And so we did it, on a totally normal Tuesday morning with zero warning to the on-call team. We flipped the kill switch. We simulated a complete and total failure of our primary GCP region, which forced an immediate failover to our DR site. The clock officially started now. And honestly, the results were fantastic. Just 2 minutes in, our automation kicked in and started the failover process. By the 15-minute mark, we saw core services already starting to light up in the new region. And then, at 45 minutes, well inside our 1-hour RTO, all systems were green. The application was 100% operational, a huge success. But that's not where the story ends. See, the whole point of testing isn't just to prove that things work, it's to find what doesn't. And oh, we found things. We found a critical DNS change that was still a manual step somebody almost forgot. We discovered a tiny difference in a firewall rule that was blocking traffic. And we found out a key engineer's emergency access token had expired. These little unexpected surprises were actually the most valuable part of the entire drill. So, what can you actually take away from all this? What did we learn? Well, we've distilled our entire experience down into a playbook, a set of lessons that you can hopefully apply to your own disaster recovery planning. Here are the big four. First, test your entire plan, end to end, not just little pieces you assume will work. Second, automate absolutely everything you can. Manual steps will fail when people are under pressure. It's just human nature. Third, you have to embrace the surprises. Those aren't failures. They're free lessons on how to get better. And finally, your runbook is a living document. It's not write once and forget. We updated ours the very same day to fix the issues we found. And that really leaves us with one final question, one that I want you to think about for your own systems. Is your recovery plan a real, tested, and constantly evolving strategy? Or is it just a document sitting on a drive somewhere? Basically, a wish that you hope you never have to make. Because trust me, the difference between the two is absolutely everything.